Okay, looks like we just might be streaming. How exciting is that? This is Jason Brenizer. I want to welcome you to the Phenomenal Future Project. We're live streaming, I think today is day 30 out of 365 days in a row that I am recording videos, and mostly live and popping this stuff up here on these different platforms depending on where you're watching. So thank you for being here with me as I go on this journey. I'm researching a lot having to do with blockchain and smart contracts, NFTs, all how they apply for artists to be able to take care of, take charge of their careers and really start, making the kind of money that they deserve and having beautiful interactions with long-term fans. That's the idea here. Now, a lot of the topics that we cover aren't just in the blockchain arena. They have to do with mindset sometimes, on making sure that we can meet the goals that we really believe we want in here, to actually turn that into reality in the real world. And then also a lot of stuff around online marketing and audience cultivation and all of that. Today, though, I actually wanted to go into a little bit more technical information. So not all artists out there are going to be that excited about what I have to talk about. Maybe the surface information is just enough. But I have talked about the promise of smart contracts and how a lot of information in the real world can be used to change state of those smart contracts. Now look, a smart contract is essentially an agreement or a contract like we would have in the real world, that the language, just the normal language that it's written in, is then taken into code, and depending on, like I said, the change of state, whether something gets a holder of a digital item, sells it to somebody else, well, the contract will be the thing that runs, that says who gets what and where it goes and how it gets written to the blockchain and all of that. But besides it, sometimes, how do I say this? See, this is the thing. It's a little bit complex, and I don't want to talk in crazy complex language, but I do want to get the ideas across. So bear with me as I'm trying to work through this in my own mind, because just because I think I understand it up here doesn't mean I can fully articulate it. But I'm going to try. Damn it, I'm going to try. Okay. So let's say that in a real world situation, a good example, okay, if I have a contract between me and another person, and it has to do with a piece of property that I am selling to that person, it could be that before that transaction is fully complete, if that person died, there might be something in the contract that stipulates other things will occur. That death of that person is an external thing happening. It's outside of the contract, but defined in the contract. But the data has to come from somewhere. The information has to come from, of course, here I am getting phone calls and stuff while I'm trying to do this. You can tell it's definitely live. So my point here is that there can be a lot of information that is not inherent to the contract itself, but that it needs to have data fed into it for other things to get keyed off that are described in the contract. So, yeah. Now, a lot of people say that there's a big problem of getting data into the blockchain from the outside world. And that is true. A blockchain, the ledger, is not built to be asking for and giving data to the outside world. If you want to envision this as a sieve, it's letting a lot of the water in and out. It's not as secure as it could be. Okay, so they've come up with this idea of having something called an oracle. It is kind of middleware. It's an entity that sits between the blockchain and the real world, and as a go-between for information back and forth. All right. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, how do you? The big problem is really making those connections. And I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. It's not just how do you ask for data over here and put it onto the blockchain over here using a middleman, middleware. It is how do you trust the data that the Oracle is sending over to the contract or inside the blockchain. So let's say I'm an Oracle and I go, oh, what's the weather out in Podunk, Mississippi? And if I get that from only one source, who's to say I can trust that source? It would be very easy for someone to take over that one source and give erroneous or false data and potentially change the state of that smart contract in a way that it shouldn't. So this is a really important problem because I would say 90% of the currently envisioned use cases that are out there for smart contracts are going to require the ledgers to access data outside themselves, information in the real world. So let's just look a little bit at the functions of what an Oracle does. It's going to listen for user or smart contract requests from within the blockchain to say, hey, I'd like to get some data. Then they've got to extract data from one or more external sources. Then they need to format that data into a blockchain readable format. Then they have to validate, or at least show, the Oracle has to be able to validate, hey, I'm trustworthy, so that the blockchain knows that the Oracle is someone that they expect to be there. And then, of course, broadcast the transaction to the blockchain, and then possibly take data from the blockchain and output it into the real world. So let's go back to that example, weather. What's the weather in New York? So you could get different answers depending on who you ask, what you ask, right? Because the weather in New York City can vary in the 5 boroughs. There's a lot of water around there and a lot of weather patterns. So who's to say that up in Yonkers, which is still considered New York maybe, is that going to be a different temperature, humidity, and pressure than if you're, on Staten Island? It's very possible. So you've got to be very specific in the way that they ask these questions, and then, of course, who they're getting that information from. So what's the correct answer? How can it be verified as true? So the first thing that I would suggest is you're pulling data from multiple sources. But then what do you do when you get that data from those multiple sources? We'll use the temperature request in New York again. Is it going to average them? Is it giving more weight to some sources over others? How do you fairly give ratings or weightings to those different sources? You could foresee that maybe all these data sources out there could, if you had the Oracle and you got paid, if the Oracle got paid by each of these sources that are giving them money, the one that pays more might get more weight, right? So you have to worry about those kinds of human interactions, making decisions that might not necessarily be fair. And I suppose that multiple sources of data could in fact spoof an Oracle. If a large conglomerate got access to a whole bunch of data sources or put up a whole bunch of more computers on the network and kind of duplicated those data sources, it's quite possible that they could send out false information, and that definitely would be a vulnerability. And of course, we don't want the Oracle running on a blockchain, so then is an Oracle one single centralized computer or multiple servers but controlled by one entity? That also is a vulnerability. And the whole idea of the way the blockchain is it's multiple nodes all around the world running the same blockchain code and having to come to consensus that all of the things that people are saying that they're trying to put onto the blockchain are valid. So creating a central Oracle becomes another vulnerability. It's another problem of trust. And so I would say that a lot of energy is being put into solving this big Oracle problem around trust, and the belief in kind of technical circles here is it's kind of a twofold decentralization solution, in that they're going to have, just like the blockchain is running on multiple nodes, meaning multiple computers in multiple locations around the world, that there are projects out there like Chainlink and Band Protocol that are doing the same thing. They're trying to create a decentralized node system for multiple oracles running all around the world at the same time and having to come to some sort of consensus, and then also pulling data from many, many, many sources so that they don't have to trust just one source. Of course, there is a lot more complexity to how they're trusting those sources, and a little bit of what I alluded to earlier is the weighting how much they can be trusted. There's also going to be reputation management. How much quality information have they given in the past? So it's like a track record, essentially. So the better they do, the higher their ratings would be maybe similar to what you would see on Amazon and the way a rating system works, right? Right now, you as an individual user on Amazon, you may be looking at, there are 9,000 4.5-star reviews on this product or from this seller, similar to eBay. You would have more trust for that. This would be not just an individual looking at that data, but the Oracle itself having some way to aggregate that data and build some sort of trust. Like I said, this is just scratching the surface. I want to present information like this, number one, because I want to get better at describing it and having to do it on a live video definitely gives me that opportunity. Of course, getting in front of a whole bunch of people, whether virtual or real, is a good way to have kind of be on the spot. But I think it's important to at least listen to some of these more complex ideas on what's going on in blockchain development, because for artists out there, right? Because you're going to have a lot of naysayers, a lot of people that are telling you, they're kind of whispering in your ear, little birdies, trying to tell you why not to do things. And that's a problem that we run into a lot as artists, right? Because we're risk takers. We're always trying new things. We're, creating something from nothing. Like that's bold. And a lot of times we fall flat on our face. We fail, but we try to fail forward and learn in the process and get better at what we do. Try to become a master of whatever craft that we're up to. And there are so many people that have so much fear, not just for themselves. Well, it's more for themselves, that they wouldn't ever want to take that risk. And they see you making strides and making progress and potentially leaving their sphere. You may find that old friends or family members, they may say things because they present it like they mean well, like they have your best interests at heart. But really what is often going on is that they're listening to their own fears and projecting that upon you. And so I want you to have ammunition when they start saying things like this, like, this may be something that says, there's this terrible problem of you can't trust any of the data that's going into your smart contract, so your stuff could be gamed and you could lose all your money, right? It's scary enough that if you didn't know anything at all about what they were talking about, you might just hear that they have knowledge about something and why it's bad, and enough people saying those kinds of things stack up, and you eventually get broken down and go, I won't worry about that right now. We'll see if it plays out, 10 years from now or something like that. All I really want you to be empowered to be able to have, number one, have thicker skin and realize that there are some smart people out there working on any problems that do exist in this new technology, and they are working hard at solving this, because it's not just for you artists out there, right? This is for the medical industry. This is for the insurance industry. This is for real estate. This is for anything that has to do with contracts and trying to secure information and be able to share information in a way that's fair, and have you, the person generating the data, has more sense of ownership of that data and access to it. That's the beauty of a decentralized network. So just know that there are a lot of entrenched, very complex systems out there, like voting, for instance. There is a lot that has to happen for voting and believing that we can trust voting that goes through a blockchain. But it will come, because there are a lot of smart people that know that if they can make it happen, it will be a better system than what we currently have. Hanging chads and all. Oh, actually, Chad is the plural of Chad, right? If you weren't around in the election between George Bush Jr. and Al Gore, and it going down to a recount in Florida, there was a story about hanging, basically they were paper ballots, right? And you push this little pin into the different holes about what you're voting, and then those cards got read into a reader machine, and there was a lot of those ballots in Florida had little pieces of paper. Basically, the hole didn't get popped all the way out, and instead it just kind of, here's the hole and here's the paper, and it just kind of flopped to the edge, and you had these, what they called Chad. And the plural of Chad was Chad. Why, I don't know. But I say that because obviously our voting system is not perfect here in the United States, and each municipality has different systems. Wouldn't it be nice to have it be the same across the nation, and that you'd know it would be the same to vote in Pennsylvania as it would be to California, to Iowa, to Maine? I think that would make us all feel a little bit safer. It would also be nice to be able to vote from your phone, and basically show your identity on here and vote from anywhere, so that you wouldn't have to wait in a ridiculously long line. I think that would be pretty amazing too. That's possible if done right on the blockchain as well. So I say all this stuff because artists are always on the cutting edge, always on the front of the wave, and I just want to give you that knowledge and power, so that you can beat those people off with a stick, the ones trying to keep you small. I'm trying to make you big and have a beautiful career, the biggest career you could ever imagine. All your dreams come true. That's what I'm here advocating for you, and for me too. So yeah, I hope you have a phenomenal future. You stick with us, you'll at least have a little bit better chance, and it will be a fun ride, because you get to be making history. The blockchain right now it's like the biggest thing since the smartphones and the internet before that. So let's take this ride together. That's what I got tonight. I hope you all have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will talk to you tomorrow.